Hey class, in this lab we're going to be going over user testing. And so we'll be using Google Forms in this case to create a survey that we can give to people who are going to play the game, and they can give us feedback so we can learn how people are experiencing the game and then make improvements or adjustments based on the feedback that we get. So the first thing that we'll do is go to Google. You can create an account or use an account that you already have, and we'll create a form. And then we're going to add some questions to the form, including quantitative as well as qualitative responses. So people can comment on things like how long they played for or how hard they thought it was, and then they can also have some general commentary about what they think about the game. The next step is to share the survey. So you can share the survey with students in the class. You can also share the survey with other family and friends or other people that you might be connected to online, and ask some people to fill out your form so you can get some feedback to use. So that process will take a little while. Once you've collected enough responses, then you can make a post about the user testing. So you will need a little bit of time between creating the survey and then actually creating the post. Once you get your results, you probably need at least 5 responses to get some decent results. You can read the responses on the Google Form Responses tab. And Google Forms is going to make some graphics and pie charts and things like that that you can take some screenshots, and then you can write a summary on the Open Lab. So you don't have to include all the results, but maybe just include a few of the screenshots and then describe or summarize the qualitative feedback that you got, and then point out 3 things that you want to improve on your game. So you don't necessarily have to do this by the end of the semester, but I just want you to think about the feedback and choose what are the 3 things that, based on the feedback that I received, would be the most helpful for me to improve my game, and just write down what those 3 things are. Once you write all that out, you can post that on the Open Lab. So let's get started. So to get started, we're going to go over to Google Forms. So if you go to this link, you'll go to forms.google.com. If you're already logged into your Google account, it'll automatically open. So I'll click here and we can see it's open to my Google account. If you have multiple Google accounts, you might want to choose a specific Google account. If you don't have a Google account, you should go ahead and create one. So if you go to this page, if I go to an incognito window and go to forms.google.com, it's going to ask me to sign in, and I can create an account. And you can set that up. I assume that most people will have a Google account. If you don't and you need help creating one, let me know. We can go over it. It's pretty simple. But if you already have a Google account, you can just go ahead and start a new form. So if you're on the forms page, you can choose one of the templates, or you can just use a blank form. That's probably the easiest one to go with. Now we can begin creating a survey that we'll send to people who are playing the game. We will get some different types of feedback from them. So let's make a title for this form. I'm just going to call it My Game Feedback. If you wanted to give it a description, you can put it here. Just say, please play my game for class and give me feedback on what I can improve. Something like that, just so people know what they're doing. And so we're going to have a couple different types of feedback. Remember, we want to have qualitative and quantitative feedback. So for the questions, you can have things with answers that can be options or a scale or numbers or things like that. And then you can also have options for people to write as much as they want, or a simple response or other things like that. The first thing I'm going to ask is, how long did you play the game for? So I'll make a new question and I'll say, how long did you play the game for? And for this one, you could do multiple choice and fill in different options. We could say option 1 is less than 5 minutes, so a very short playthrough. And then we can add an option 5 to 10 minutes, and then 10 to 20 minutes. And with our games, it's probably not that likely that people will be playing much longer than that. So we'll just say longer than 20 minutes. And so this will give us a nice understanding of how long people play for. If everyone says less than 5 minutes, we might want to add some more content to the game. If everybody says between 5 and 10 minutes, that's probably a good length, considering that we have just made this game during the short period of the semester. So that'll tell us a little bit about how long the user played for. So let's add a new question. So I'll just hit this plus button. So for this one, we can ask the user to rate the difficulty of the game, and we can use a linear scale. So we can say, rate the difficulty of the game. And Notice that Google actually changed the box here to linear scale. So they probably saw this rate in the question and they guessed correctly that we want to use a linear scale. So we'll say 1 to 5. So for 1, I'll say very easy. And for 5, I'll say very difficult. So then let's move on to the next question. So there's other things that we might want to test for that may be specific to our game. So I have a game where there's a lot of similar colors like green snakes and green vines and green trees. So I might ask, was it easy to see the obstacles in the game? So I'll say, was it easy to see the snakes in the game? And so there's some suggestions. We can add all of the suggestions. So I'll click add all. So yes, it was easy. No, maybe. Maybe doesn't really make sense here. So I'm going to take that out. And so I'll leave that as just a yes or no question. Another thing you might want to consider is whether the player could hear the sound effects versus the background music. So we could ask a question about that. We could say, was it easy to hear the sound effects? And then we could add different options for this. We could say yes, or no, they were too quiet, or no, the background music was too loud. So that'll tell us a little bit about the balance between the sounds, the background music, and the sound effects. So this is just an example. You don't have to use this, but if sound is something that you want to test for, that would be a good way to get some different feedback based on the sound. Another thing we might want to ask is how easy was it to find the instructions for the game? So I'll add another question and I'll say, how easy was it to find the instructions and play the game? And so this is kind of maybe going to talk about the UI a little bit. So people might say, I didn't find the instructions, I didn't know what to hit. And so we can put this on a linear scale. So this is very easy to very difficult. And so I think that's a good number of examples of quantitative data. You can use completely different questions if you want. You don't have to use any of these questions, but you want to get a good overview of the general feeling of the game, as well as some specifics that relate to your game. So we can actually preview this form as we're working on it. We can preview it at any time. And so we can see our questions and how they will appear to our users. So you might want to move them around a little bit. I think actually the instructions are probably makes sense to move these up a little bit. So that might be the first thing that we ask about the user interface. And then how long, how difficult, was it easy to see the snakes, was it easy to hear sound effects? So those are some good quantitative questions. Let's add a couple of qualitative questions. So I'm going to click the plus button. Oh, and I moved up here. So let's move this form question down. And so for this one, I'm going to choose, there's short answer or paragraph. So I'll choose paragraph so the user can write as much as they want. And I'll say, what are some improvements I could make to the game? And so this is just a general chance. I'll make sure to add an S here. So this is just a general chance for users to say, you know, I thought that you could have the player jump higher, or you could have more levels, or the colors were too hard to see. So this will kind of prompt them to say, your game could be better if you do this. And then let's add another qualitative question, so paragraph, and say, what are some of the things you enjoyed in the game? And so this is kind of prompting a different type of response for the user to talk about what was good about the game. And so that might tell you things maybe you wouldn't be aware of necessarily. Like they might say, I really like this bad guy, or I really like this art, or something like that. And so you can get feedback about what's good versus what could be improved. So this is pretty good. You probably want to have around 5 to 10 questions. You might want to think about other specific things that are important to you for your game. If you're focusing on animation or sound or the level design, you could ask specific questions about, you know, did you enjoy the level design, or how many levels do you think there should be, things like that. Another option we have is to make the questions either required or not. So I might make the questions at the top required, just kind of the quantitative questions. And maybe you could have like a follow-up question. Like you could say, was it easy to see the snakes? And they can say yes or no, and that's required. But you could have a follow-up question that's not required that says, if no, what would you do to change it or something like that? So that's one reason that you might want to make something not required. But I'm going to make all of these required. And so I'm going to save this. Let's make sure to give it a title. And so I'll save this, and then I'm going to have to share it with people. So this is the next step. Once you create the form, you're not just submitting the form, you are ultimately going to be submitting the feedback that you get from the form. So we want to get a link to this. So I'm going to click on the send button. I'm going to go to the link, and you can click shorten URL if you want to get a nice little short URL. You can collect emails, so that will have responses with emails, but we are going to be fine with just anonymous results. We don't really need to know who it is that's giving us this feedback. So I'm just going to copy that link. And so here is where you can send that link on Discord. So I might log into Discord and share it with the class. And so people can get the form. But we also want to make sure that the form and the game are easy to find together. So let's go to our itch page and add in the form here. So I'll go to itch.io, and I'm already logged in. You may need to log in if not. And I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to find my game. I have a few different versions of this because I've been testing things. So I'm just going to choose this one. And so we want to edit the game. So I'm going to click on edit game here. And what I want to do is add this link in the description. So I'll say, here is a survey to add your feedback. And then I can post the link here. It looks like they already know it's a link, so that's nice. I could also just add the link into the text. So I could highlight the text, insert this link, and click open a new tab and insert. So either way you want to do it is fine. Sometimes it's easy just to paste in the link, but sometimes it's nice to have it appear there. And make sure to save. And then when we view the page, now you can see the survey link on your itch page. And so now when you send it to somebody, they don't have to look for the form itself. And just to make things simple, let's also include a link to our itch page on our form. So I can go back to my form and edit this, and let's go in here. So I'm just going to add this into the description. So I'll say, you can play my game here. And I'll put a link in there. Google recognizes that's a link. And if I click on there, it's going to open the game. So that's really nice because now people can easily find the game or the form regardless of which one I have shared. So now before we finish this assignment, we need to actually collect some responses. So I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to fill out. So I'm going to go to a incognito window and I'm just going to make some fake responses. Okay, so I've submitted some fake responses. Let's go back to our form and take a look at our responses. So the cool thing about the Google Forms is we can see these graphs that it creates, so we can look at our feedback. So it says how easy was it to find the instructions and play the game, and we can just kind of see visually that it was pretty easy. Most people said it was very easy. A couple of people said it was a little bit hard, but nobody said it was very hard. So that's fine. We don't have to worry too much about that. How long was the gameplay for? There's one less than 5, one 5 to 10, and then two 10 to 20. So that's pretty good. We can get a good sense of the average times and then rate the difficulty of the game. So few people said it was pretty easy. One person said it was difficult. And then how easy it was to see the snakes. People seem to be divided about this. How easy it was to hear the sound effects. Only one person said no. The background music was too loud. 3 people said sound effects were too quiet. So we can use those charts. You might not want to use all of them. You might just want to use the ones that you think will be most relevant to what you want to say in your feedback. So I might take a screenshot of a couple of these, and I'm just going to use my Command-Shift-3 and then drag to make a little screenshot. Difficulty wasn't too bad. I might think, half and half for this was not a great result. And for the sound effects, this isn't exactly what I wanted to see. So I'll screenshot a couple things if I plan to make improvements, or if you got really good feedback on something, you can put that in there as well. And then for the qualitative feedback, what we want to do is kind of read through there and see if there are places where we can see that the qualitative feedback actually corresponds with the quantitative feedback so that we can make sort of summaries or decide what to do with our project in the future. Now we've got enough feedback. Let's go over to the Open Lab and post our results. So I'm going to go to the Open Lab, going to create a post, and let's add the category. So there's user testing, and let's say my user testing feedback. You can summarize or add context here. So you can say, here is the feedback I got from my user testing results. If you want to include a link to the form, you can. Here is a link to my testing survey. So if people see this, maybe they'll want to go check it out. So let's grab the link from here, paste it in here. So, oops. First I have to select the text and open a new tab. And so I'll start with my first chart here. So I can summarize here. I can say most users played for longer than 5 minutes. So that's a good result. And then my next chart, I'll paste in here. And so half of the users could not see the snakes in the game. So I need to make them stand out from the background more. And then I have one more chart over here. And so all users agreed the sound effects were too quiet. So I need to make them louder. And so at this point, we've seen some of our results, and now you can kind of summarize. You want to pick 3 things that you hope to improve in the game. So going back to my feedback, a lot of people said add more levels, the game could be longer. So my first improvement is I want to add more content to the game. And then my second 2 improvements are going to be based on the feedback. So add contrast or brightness to the enemies and make the sound effects louder. So I'll just summarize that. I'll say for my 3 improvements, I want to, and we probably aren't really going to have time to do this semester, but so you don't actually have to make these improvements, but it's a good idea just to think about what you would improve. And you could obviously continue to work on the game and make these improvements if you want to. So what I'm going to improve is add more levels, louder sound effects, and I'll say higher contrast between enemies and backgrounds. So those gives me 3 things to kind of work on my game in the future. So let's go ahead and preview this. Okay, so I've got my link to my survey, I've got my graphs, and they're pretty easy to see the feedback, and then I have my 3 improvements. So that's everything that I need for this assignment. So that looks good. I'm going to close this and I'm going to publish.